Calaroga Shark Media.
Hi there, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Today, a crossover episode with the Letterman Podcast. Mike Chisholm is the host of the Letterman Podcast, and he had seen a list of the top 10 late-night hosts of all time, and he didn't like the list, so he made his own, and he wanted me to react to it. So over the Christmas break, he was like, hey, I'm going to send you a list. I'm like, don't send me the list. I don't want to see your list. I'll just react to it. So that's what you're going to hear right now.
We've talked a little bit about your reaction to the Billboard top 25 comedians of the century. Well, there's been a few late night ones as well. One particular late night list came out, the top 10 late night hosts of all time list, which I appreciated. It's hard when it's a Mount Rushmore. When you got to pick 4, it's hard. When it's 10, you get a little bit more breathing room and you can talk about things. I did not like the list that came out. I don't even want to, I don't want to, I wasn't a fan of the list that came out. And so I decided to pen my own top 10 list. And I think that I did a pretty good job. I have not made this list public to anybody. You're the first person that's going to hear it. And the whole premise of this show was you reacting to what I think is the definitive top 10 late night hosts in history list. So
you got to set this up, man. You got to set from the home office in Vancouver. It's the top 10 late night hosts of all time. Top 10 late night hosts of all time, number 10.
Okay, I got that. I got that in my head. And so what we're going to do, from the home office in Lumbee, British Columbia, the top 10 late night television hosts in history. For me, the top 10 late night hosts, it has to be started by Steve Allen. Number 10 is Steve Allen. And this list is I like this list because there's a couple that are sort of combined with each other. There are a couple that are kind of grouped together. But I start the list with Steve Allen because as far as I'm concerned, this is the guy that set the blueprint. You do talk about a blueprint that even in 2025, the format is the same for the most part. The desk, the monologue, the guests, the panel, the way that they're set up. This is the guy that basically said, this is how it's going to be. Yes, there were shows before him. There was stuff that came along before him, but Steve Allen is the guy that actually set the tone. And all these years later, that blueprint is still being followed. So to me, you start the list with Steve Allen, not because he was the first to do it. You make him number 1, but you say, okay, you're the guy that's going to start the list, just like you're the guy that started the genre. That's why I positioned him at number 10.
Oh, absolutely. If we had a magic wand and you could take Steve Allen in his prime and say, we're going to use Doctor Who technology here. Steve Allen in your prime right now, I need you to fill in for Johnny Carson on a Tuesday night in 1976. Done. I need you to fill in on Late Night with David Letterman on a Monday in 1985. No problem. Where's the Alka-Seltzer suit? I got this. Same note on Conan. Hey, Jon Stewart's throwing up in the bathroom. You think you can wing the Daily Show for us? Absolutely. Jimmy Kimmel doesn't want to do it anymore. You want a show on ABC in 2028? Sure. So 100% on Steve Allen. 100%.
There we go. And the cool thing about Steve, and not just Steve, but some of the other pioneers of this genre. If you go onto Don Giller's David Letterman YouTube channel, there's the talk show host compilation. And I've talked about this one a lot. I don't know if there's any series, and this is a big commitment because it's like there's 7 parts to it. And I think they're all an hour each, something like that, but it's in order. Every single talk show host appearance on one of David Letterman's shows. And Steve Allen appeared on Late Night. I think he appeared on the morning show too, now that I think about it, the morning show and Late Night. And it's really cool watching Steve. His influence on Dave is obvious. In the first couple interactions, there's a nervousness that Dave has. And I love that about early Dave. It's the exact opposite of where he is right now. He's not the elder statesman that can communicate with anybody. He is really nervous, and to watch Steve come in and impart some wisdom and grace in doing so, and even doing the show, is such a cool thing. And so I highly recommend that for people who love this stuff. Highly recommend going and watching that compilation. Number 9, another trailblazer in his own right, Arsenio Hall. And I have Arsenio here at number 9 because, of course, the first talk show host of color, who has his own full-time show. Johnny, of course, had guest hosts of color for the Tonight Show, but this is the first one that it's really helmed his own deal, and not just helmed his own deal, but was a significant
Yes.
person in culture, all culture. Yes. I was a huge hip hop fan growing up, and I loved the music on late night. I loved the music that would show up on late night. But to be perfectly frank, the bullseye for me when it came to music on any late night talk show of me growing up, it was Arsenio Hall. Arsenio Hall had phenomenal music. He had phenomenal guests. He had a different vibe to things, of course. And I thought just the way that he's the guy that many people said, oh yeah, Carson's in trouble because this new hip person is coming in. And he was a cultural phenomenon as well. Obviously didn't have the lasting power, but at the same time, significant enough to make it to the top 10.
Oh, absolutely. If you think of a lot of people that took on the Johnny time slot, if not Johnny specifically, they were all playing on Johnny's corner. Let's do something similar. Like if you look at like Pat Sajak's show, what is that? It's, it's the Tonight Show without being the Tonight Show. Like, what are we doing? Whereas Arsenio did something different for a different audience, and there was a lot of different audience out there, and both shows could coexist. You are reminding me of the Carsenio sketch. Now,
yes,
I'm trying to remember. I've read several Carson books, and I can't remember where the experts have landed, if that sketch actually bothered Johnny or not. But the Carsenio sketch, for people who have not seen it, it's on YouTube. It's a must watch, and it really speaks to that particular moment.
It does. And from what I have heard, we'll ask Mark Malkoff about it, but yeah, Johnny, one of the things that gave Johnny pause in his entire career was Arsenio, but also Carsenio, the idea of being able to, maybe not a full on gut shot, but a grazing bullet to the bulletproof man. I think is something that happened there. And it, apparently Arsenio gave Johnny pause, saying, well, maybe it is time to hang it up. So, I mean, that's significant in itself.
Yeah, I mean, we all age, and I increasingly feel my own age, and I love doing my podcast. I'm like, at some point in the not crazy future, it's going to be like, okay, 70-year-old man talking about Dane Cook. David Letterman, that show aired 60 years ago, old timer. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
I do sort of have an unofficial line. I've never really pondered where it is, but there are comedic things that I don't talk about because it's like speaking a different language. I profess to live on Old Man Mountain. And at some point, it's just not my thing. Somebody's doing something on TikTok. It's wonderful. It's great. People love it. I don't get it. If you ever want to feel old, every now and then, Variety will do a top 20, next gen superstars of media thing. And you go down the list. You mentioned before not being familiar with Mr. Beast. Never mind Mr. Beast. You go down their top 20 list and you're like, I don't know any of these people, which is fine. Which is fine. I could say to my kids, hey, there was this guy, Dave, and he threw watermelons off a tower. And they'd be like, yeah, okay, boomer.
Yeah. I keep saying that to my granddaughter. She's 7. I'm putting all this pressure on her saying, you're the one that's got to keep me cool. You make sure you only like cool things. Okay.
You see, there's no window here. So when he throws the card, it's a sound effect. And that's funny. It's funny because there's no window, kids. It's really funny. What?
That being said, she and I, because I'm playing around with the idea of her doing some reaction videos to some of the stuff Dave did. When I put on Dave's stuff where he's throwing stuff off a tower, she absolutely, to this day, in 2025, a 7-year-old girl laughs her little ass off when she sees him throwing stuff off the tower or running things over with the steamroller. She loved the running things over with the steamroller. She asks to watch it. She's 7, so that gives me hope for that generation, right?
But there. What's funny about Larry Bud Millman not being able to really hear what Dave's saying? All the timing's wrong. The guy's not really delivering the lines well. Like, why is that funny? It just is. But hey, kids, want to watch Larry Bud Millman? What?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, now I've got it. Now I've got an assignment. Alara needs to see Larry Bud Millman, and we'll have to find out. Number 8, Craig Ferguson. The people that made this list are ones who definitely changed, who added something to the game. Maybe didn't change the game, but they added something. To me, Ferguson, I loved him. My golden age in watching late night television was when I could watch Late Show, Conan's show on TBS, and Craig Ferguson. I know that is not necessarily popular to a lot of the purists. As far as I'm concerned, Conan and Ferguson are two that were influenced by guys like Dave and some of the stuff that's out there, that the esoteric stuff perhaps, or just the plain weird. And the idea that he evolved his show to a place where he had a robot skeleton for a sidekick, and they had two guys in a two-man horse costume that would come in every single night, and the audience not only bought it, but they yearned for it when Secretariat would come in. He had a cult following. I really appreciate his sensibility, but he also brought some seriousness to the zaniness. When he had Desmond Tutu on as a guest, or some of these other people, that Craig Ferguson, to me, moved the ball up the field and did it in a very, very compelling way. That's why he makes the list in the top 10. Did you ever, he started as a stand-up. I don't know if you guys' paths ever would have crossed.
Yes,
you were doing
yes.
the Curious thing. You must have.
Yes, I got to work with Craig a handful of times. He came up maybe to do a guest appearance, and we asked him to do some VO for the Radio Classics channel. And he started improving, and we're like, wait, there's something here. And he agreed to come back the next day. We grabbed this guy, Ghosty, who was on the staff, who could do voices and improv, well enough to keep up with Craig Ferguson. And they came back and just riffed, and I forget what we even did with it, but it was just one of those magical things of like, oh, this is fun. I get to do this today. I'm going to just hang out in the studio and watch Craig Ferguson improv. Really super nice guy. I've always said, not that he's a troll on TV, but he's in person, he's super handsome. Like, he's a really good looking dude.
Yeah.
Loved working with him. Would love to run into him again. I've got to see him just as a fan, not going, hey, can I meet you backstage? Just like, I'm going to buy tickets, go to a show and go home. Really fantastic. It's a shame he didn't stick with late night, because he would have had a 30-year run at it. Boy, don't you wish you could put him on at 12:30 tonight and he was on?
He's fantastic. I would put him on I listen to his podcast now, and it's fun the one thing that you mentioned there, when the idea of bringing him back to do some work with Ghosty, the thing that Craig brings to the table is something similar that Dave has, where his reactions are very good and very funny and very out of left field. And when he has somebody like Josh Robert Thompson, who did the voice for Jeffrey Peterson, and then of course Morgan Freeman and all these other stuff, Josh is amazing. Josh has been on this show, and we had a marathon. I think it was a 2-hour conversation with Josh, 2.5 hours on here. And the idea that there's this guy that is so good that he is actually the voice of Morgan Freeman when they want to edit and make the safe for TV movies, and they edit his dialogue. He's the guy that does not just Morgan but other people's voices, and yet he's crazy as all get out. And then Craig can react to that. I love that Craig could react to that. Craig was so he would take the blue card of what the segment producer had prepared for him for who his upcoming guest was, and he would tear it up beforehand because he wanted to have a spontaneous conversation with people. That is playing with that net, like being able to rely on your rapier like wit and react, and that be the source of the entertainment. Even the monologue was loose. The monologue was on bullet points. And the idea that he would just come out and start talking and not just be able to sustain an audience, but like you said, if he chose to, could have gone on a run that would put him up there, with the greats. But his sensibility was, I don't want to be part of this late night club.
Yeah.
And that was fun too. He's a little punk rock. He's a lot punk rock, in fact, when you look at Craig's history. So yeah, to me, he's a guy that certainly deserves to be on the list.
Sorry to cut you off.
Please.
Is that part of the magic that I don't want to be part of this club? Now, I can break that apart, because Jimmy Kimmel wants to be David Letterman. David Letterman wanted to be Johnny Carson, but wasn't allowed to be Johnny Carson twice. And that sort of created David Letterman. Conan O'Brien, some random writer, and they gave who are you giving the show to? What are you saying? So, like, is that part of the magic of not wanting to do the show? And conversely, is that part of the problem people have with Jimmy Fallon, who I respect Jimmy's game. Jimmy understands what the Tonight Show is, and he runs the playbook. Is it cool? It is not cool. Nope. But he runs the playbook the way he's asked to run it. He runs it very well, and he's going to wind up being the last 11:30 show standing, it sounds like. But is there something to be said to, I don't actually want to do this?
John Stewart? this is okay. Jon Stewart, Jimmy Kimmel, one more year. I'm going to sign a 1 year contract. And I mean, some people look at it and go, okay, yeah, he doesn't want to get in the way of the Colbert because Colbert's going to have his big send off. Like, I mean, we're about to enter an era here. I remember the last 6 weeks of Dave. There's going to be an era here where Colbert is ramping up to his leaving. I can see why Kimmel didn't want to be a part of that, but there's also a part of me that goes, it'd be cool to see Jimmy Kimmel do this for year to year for the next 5 years, because he's walking on the knife's edge. He's like, okay, am I going to keep doing it? Am I not going to keep doing it? And to me, that adds an element of freshness, just like the hesitation. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be that guy. Ferguson, for a long time wasn't wearing a tie. And then he went and started wearing vests, and he started doing different things to try and, because he was uncomfortable with conformity, and the idea of wanting to break out of that somehow, I think absolutely is part of the magic. A hesitation, I'm doing this, but I don't really want to be here kind of an attitude. Oh, we love that stuff. But again, it's the same example that Bill Carter used in his book, talking about in Late Shift, talking about the difference between Dave and Jay. It's pop music versus Pink Floyd. They're different atmospheres, they're different people, they're different everything. There's a big group of people that love Jimmy Fallon, and it's a pop music group. Whereas some people who are more like aficionados like us are like, well, yeah, it's just that was my thing with Dave and Jay. And by the way, number 7 on the list of the top 10 greatest late night hosts in history, number 7 is Jay Leno.
Jay Leno, that guy's the worst. Okay, we'll take the break here and we'll come back and talk about the most hated man in the world, Jay Leno. We continue with a look at Mike Chisholm from the Letterman Podcast's top 10 greatest late night hosts of all time. And apparently this next guy, whew.
On the list of the top 10 greatest late night hosts in history, number 7 is Jay Leno.
Oh,
so he made the list.
The worst guy who ever lived. This guy, Jay Leno. He's the worst. The way he will have opinions about late night television as if he knows anything about it. Did you see during the summer they asked him about Colbert and he weighed in on it? What a jerk. What does he know? He's hosted 22 years of The Tonight Show, more episodes than anybody, including Johnny Carson, as if Jay Leno has any expertise in late night. The worst guy. Plus the way, his poor wife has dementia and he takes care of her and carries her to the bathroom. This guy's the worst. I can understand why people can't stand Jay Leno. He just seems like an awful guy, doesn't he?
Oh, I was so hoping you would do that. I want to talk about that a little bit, because this is the thing on your show. Whenever Jay Leno seems to pipe up about something, somebody seems to have a problem with it, and it makes the news. And is it a generation of people who were in their formative years, they saw what happened during the Conan thing, and they've now just labeled him? Is that what's going on with Jay Leno?
Yeah, we're backing Conan because it's the same sensibility. Leno was the establishment candidate.
Yep.
And Conan was the scrappy up-and-comer who's only been in late night for 14 years himself. This poor struggling artist. Did Conan get a short run? Do shows need time to find their legs? Of course. And of course,
yep.
Was when they pull the chair back out for Jay Leno and he says, no, I've brought this up on your show before. What happens then? Do they just keep Conan on and go, hope this works out? Or do they pull out the Jimmy Fallon chair kind of quickly? And now we all hate Jimmy Fallon because he stole Conan's job. I don't know. Putting it's aside funny that I might understand why you're on Team Conan and are mad at Jay. Us Letterman people got over it. I'm not mad at Jay. Back in the original late night wars that I want Dave to get the Tonight Show, I did. Absolutely. But I don't go around kicking a box all day going, I can't believe Jay Leno got the Tonight Show. What does he know about late night comedy? It's okay. It's okay, guys. But putting aside the horrible sin of taking the Tonight Show back, I just don't understand why people hate Jay Leno.
Yeah, me too. I mean, this is one of the greatest joke writers in history. And I mean, you look at the hosts of the Tonight Show, how many of them were stand-ups? Really at the end of the day, Jay is really the only one. Like Fallon was as well. Fallon definitely was a stand-up, but he was more an actor and an impressionist and things like that. He had a very different stand-up act than Jay, that's for sure. Jay is a pure joke writer. He is a pure stand-up. Not only when you talk about, he's an influential one. You got guys like David Letterman himself, Jerry Seinfeld, who called Jay, the greatest joke writer ever. And when you look at what he wanted to add to the Tonight Show, he has this huge, like the fact that somebody followed Johnny and they stayed in the job is nuts. And this goes back to what you were saying about giving time for shows to find their feet. For a year and a half, Letterman handed him his lunch.
Yeah.
And Leno, to his credit, was a tactician and did everything he possibly could to rough the edges off the Tonight Show. So it was a perfect, gleaming shine that you could see yourself in. And every little detail counted, and he became a tactician. Whereas, again, you look at Dave, yes, everybody was working their asses off, but they came across as a product that, isn't like that. It's not shiny. It is a little bit more clunky. And that's kind of their identity. Leno went the exact other way and said, no. We need a monologue where I have to do credit to what is considered one of the greatest pieces of television content of all time, which is Johnny Carson's monologue. And I have to do that justice. So, I mean, of course, it's going to take him time to adjust and to grow. That's where I have the little problem with, he talks about Conan and Conan's numbers with the Tonight Show. And we're in a diminishing market and there's all these sorts of things. And he says, oh, the numbers are the numbers, that's what happens. Yeah, but you were given that time. And to answer your question, what you said earlier, if Conan was given the time with the Tonight Show, hindsight is 2020. Look at what Conan has become since then. Now, he wouldn't have had the bump of the robbery, and people getting, that culmination point of people getting excited or whatever, and all coming together and creating Team Coco. That might not have happened if he was given that 18 months to run the Tonight Show and do it the way he wanted to do it, and give people time to get used to it. I think Conan would have been just fine in the Tonight Show chair, but NBC had a whole bunch of things going on, and Jay took the brunt of it. The fact that Jay had this contract, this pay and play contract, why aren't people up in arms about NBC creating this impossible scenario for themselves? So there's a lot more to it, but the idea that Jay Leno isn't revered today, even if he's not your cup of tea, it is asinine to me. 22 years on the Tonight Show. Are you kidding me? Yeah. So Leno is, to me, Leno is formidable. You heard it here first on the Letterman podcast, but he's formidable at number 7 on the top 10 list all time.
So two other things about Jay, and I imagine your audience, of course, is familiar with Jay's appearances on Late Night with David Letterman.
Yes, thank you for saying this. Yep.
Watch those. You'll see a different, edgier. Maybe he's not Dice Clay, but it's an edgier Jay Leno. Also brilliantly parodied by Chris Elliott, who came out just as Jay Leno one night, a classic sketch that I probably watch once a week. And you have that version of Jay Leno. I also think the NBC 10 p.m. idea was the right idea, maybe a little too early. Mm-hmm. And as we've seen TV budgets evolve, if you told me I could have Stephen Colbert at 10 p.m., pared down, hey, we're going to put 2 chairs on a stage and I need you to talk to somebody for an hour, 4 nights a week. Mm-hmm. That's probably pretty budget friendly, and I would welcome that on my network lineup if I could get it.
Absolutely. And if you look at guys like Charlie Rose and Steve Tom Snyder, you look at these long form. There's always been a hunger for the long form, and this is where podcasting is right now. There's a reason why it's. Yeah,
sorry, Snyder was a podcast. And now we're putting podcasts on Netflix, and everything's come all the way around again.
That's right.
If I could get you Tom Snyder in his prime and go, hey, he's going to do an hour and a half once a week deep dive podcast, and we'll shoot it and throw it on Netflix. Yeah, okay, great, sign him up.
Yep, absolutely. By the way, Jay Leno also, I don't think he did it the way Dave did. Jay Leno did evolve as a talk show host. The stand-up comedian, I mean, yes, he was phenomenal. That was what brought him to the dance as a stand-up and as a joke machine and whatnot. But he did get better at communicating with people. Not even close to where Dave is, of course. But the thing that differentiates to me, people ask me that sometimes about their interview skills as at their best. This is something Shecky told me from the very beginning. In fact, Shecky even said this to me the day that I got my picture, my Letterman picture signed and whatnot. There was a small window opportunity where I could have met him, and Shecky said this to me. He goes, "If Dave's curious about you, it's going to be great." And Dave had this way when he had people across from him that he was having conversations with, where a curiosity would come out. And I think there was an everyman curiosity that came out where when it was Jay, it felt manufactured. It felt like he was asking questions off of a card, as opposed to a genuine curiosity connection that was created. So that's, in my mind, that's something I've wanted to say on the show for a long time, because people ask me about that all the time. I think that's a major, major difference between the two. Did you ever encounter Jay back in the day?
No, I've never met Jay. I would love to get him on the podcast. It's funny. If you ask me, if Dave Chappelle were available, of course I'm going to say yes to Dave Chappelle, any of the big comedians. But for the people who I really want to talk to, I think right now, I would love to talk to Jay Leno and do a version of my bit and just break that whole thing down with him.
Oh God, it would be so good. It would be so good. Because the guy does deserve credit. And it's his generosity as well is just, it's crazy. His generosity. He's accused sometimes of being self-aggrandizing. I think sometimes when you do as many good things as you do, and if you're not careful, and not saying that there might not be some marketing involved or whatever to promote things, that could be there. But that being said, when you do so many good things, many times you might get tagged with that. But every single person that I've ever talked to who have ever said something about Jay Leno's generosity, and it's, I don't know, it's more than 10, they talk about him being this kind, giving, but very high level. He plays at a high level when it comes to writing jokes and making jokes and things. But the man himself, very, very, he's an amazing American. And I'm glad you're poking fun at this and bringing it to people's attention. But yeah, people shitting on Jay Leno at this day and age, I don't know if there's a huge need to it. Making fun, that's completely different. Making fun of him, but people who come across with anger, that's not cool.
Well, sure. And as a comedian, he would appreciate you making fun of him. And again, if for some reason I got on his radar, hey, this guy is making fun of you, saying you're the worst person who ever lived, and then you actually listen to the bit I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm clearly not saying he's a horrible, horrible person.
No.
The other white whale guest I would like to get is Robert Smigel, who I think has quietly been the influence in comedy the last 30 years. He's not really in front of the camera, but boy, you look at the stuff that guy's attached to, and there's a Hall of Fame career.
Absolutely. That guy might be, and it might be by design. Maybe he does like flying under the radar a little bit, for being someone as big as he is. The guy's a legend. The guy is an absolute, I was watching the Downey doc, and I mean, you got some of these people who come along who are just, they transcend, the people who create new things and the people who imitate those things that have just been created that people love, but they just do a little bit of a different thing, to it. Smigel's a guy that actually kicked the ball down the field. I was watching Christmas Time for the Jews, the Darlene Love, on the SNL Christmas special, and I just like his cartoons, like that is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And my wife walked in the room while it was on, and she heard the hook, and she heard Darlene say Christmas Time for the Jews. And she just sat there and she started looking at it. And I don't know if Candy had seen it before or not, but she doesn't love comedy the way that I do. And she just looks at it and goes, "What year was this made?" And I told her, and she's like, "How do you come up with that? Like, how does Robert Smigel come up with some of the crazy things and the tonnage of it?" Like that's just the way that he thinks. And that's a great pull. I'm glad you brought that up.
No,
are you ready for number? Okay. So are we done with, oh no, one other thing with Leno. Adam Sandler, one of the things that Adam Sandler did that I loved, because it goes back to Adam Sandler. I watched Adam Sandler's last special, his most recent special. Okay. Now, in it, he does a song. Can you believe that? He does a song? He actually does a song.
Oh, good.
The song is a tribute to comedy and the things that influenced his life and his
yes.
it's all comedians and stuff. And as I was watching it, I'm like, oh, I forget where he talks about, because I know Letterman's in there for him, because Letterman's a huge influence, and he's going through the song and he's going through these people, all of these things, and it's so clever the way that he puts those guys in it. The line is Leno on Letterman, and there's a picture that shows up, and it's exactly what you were referring to. It's Jay on panel with Dave on late night. And that's the way that Sandler tributes them, that it's Leno on Letterman. And that's the thing.
Yes.
That's the thing. It's not the 22 years, the guy who succeeded Johnny Carson, but he did that. He did that. And for those who want to say, oh, I like Dave over Jay, that's fine, but don't take the respect away. The guy followed Carson and did it for decades. Well done, Jay Leno.
But also as a panel guest.
Yep.
Talk show hosts, radio hosts, jerks doing a podcast in their basement, hate when you ask a question and somebody goes into their bit. Now clearly you just teed me up to do the Letterman bit, so I'm guilty.
100%.
The Leno
one.
I'm guilty.
Yes.
But we're having a real conversation here, right? I'm not just doing material. But
right.
Jay on did material. He would be like, hey, Jay, what's going on? Jay, let me tell you what's going on. And then would just go into the act, but somehow kept Letterman engaged. Dave didn't just check out and be like, okay, he's doing his 4 minutes. What's my beef? And it was fantastic. Again, the Chris Elliott version of it, I just think nails the essence of it.
With Dave, though, it's the curveballs, because he was staying curious and because he might throw a curveball at Jim in the middle of it, and you didn't know how much of it. Like, that's the thing. And the segment, it's so crazy, John. Like the segment producers are the most secretive of all the people I've talked to so far. Like, some of them I've talked to in the background, but won't even come on the show. But whenever I ask the questions, okay, so like, what lines did you give to, this starlet who comes out and Dave tees up a perfect question and she answers it and it gets a huge laugh? Well, guess what? Many times that starlet did not come up with that clever line. It was a segment producer, beforehand who did it. And I love talking about, a lot of them are like magicians. They don't want to reveal what lines they gave away or how they don't want to break down the mechanics of how things work. The Leno Letterman ones, to me, were astounding, because you don't know where the material ends and the real banter begins with those two. And there's only a few guests where you can say that for, and Jay is probably the top of the heap.
You remind, this is a total tangent, but you just, when you talked about the magic behind the curtain, if you've ever seen Jackie Gleason on 60 Minutes, I think it's with Morley Safer, and he's talking about, you got to watch this, dude.
Yeah.
He starts talking about why The Honeymooners is revered, and Jackie talks about the characters and tells a story where they're in rehearsal and the sketch that they're going to do just isn't flying. And Carney says, how about this? I'll walk in, I'll call you fat, you're throwing me out of the apartment. And they were like, let's just do that. And they sort of improv'd, maybe not a full Honeymooners episode from the classic 39, but one of the sketches. And just like, okay, we all know what to do here. We all know who these characters are. Let's just do it. It's a wonderful episode of 60 Minutes you'll find online.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. And that's Dave in his testament to his longevity. Because, after he stopped doing rehearsals, after he stopped, he started slowing down a little bit, but the show must go on. His last years of Late Show, they were relying on the whimsy of what happens in the moment. They were relying on the inspiration. Now, again, we're talking about, a guy with one of the greatest wits of all time, but it's like, no, let's rely on it as opposed to overproducing things. Right. And they did, they let things get looser.
Well, before you hit record, you started to tell me something and I said, save it for the air. And that comes out of my radio training, especially if you do a morning show. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do the show in the hallway at 4:45 a.m. So you'd be like, did you see the Super Bowl? We'll talk about it on the air. Like you can't, because the second time you do it is never as natural. I openly talk about on my podcast, anytime there's a, top 10 late night hosts, you didn't send me the list. I don't want to see the list. I want to react to it as we go along, because I don't know, I have a guess who you think number one is, but maybe you don't. And when you're like number four, David Letterman, I want to go, whoa, you have it at number four? Oh my God. All right. Who's left on the list? All right. It's going to be Johnny. And wow, you don't have Colbert at number two. Do you? Like, I want to be able to do that. Whereas if you send me the list, I look at it and go, okay, when he talks about Conan, I'll say this.
Yep. There you go. And that's the best. Like I say that about with pre-interviews, with many of the guests who come on, I can just say, okay, is there anything you want me to avoid? Is there anything you want me to make sure I hit? All right, let's go. And it's a lot of fun doing that.
Boy, we're just flying through this list, huh? We got so chatty, I got to cut this in two. So we'll come back tomorrow with the rest of the list. I'll see you then.